Fabled Realms Productions presents Taken by the Unknown, a chilling mystery in Alaska. My name is Eddie, and this is my story. 50 years ago, my father and I went hiking in Denali National Park, Alaska. I was only 10 years old, eager to be my dad's little explorer. Dad loved the wilderness, and he wanted to share that love with me. That trip, our last trip, is something I've kept locked away in my heart for decades. I'm not proud of it, but I've lied about what really happened. Today, I'm ready to tell the truth. My father wasn't just any weekend hiker. He was an experienced outdoorsman who had spent years exploring Alaska's vast backcountry. Born and raised in Fairbanks, he grew up learning survival skills from his own father, a trapper who knew the wilderness like the back of his hand. My dad worked as a wildlife biologist, often spending weeks at a time deep in the untamed forests and mountains, studying animal behavior and mapping out remote areas. He had an uncanny ability to read the land, to sense changes in weather, spot hidden trails, and navigate by the stars when necessary. People trusted him with their lives in the wild, and I trusted him completely. It was a bright, crisp morning when we started the hike. My father had planned a route that would take us along a lesser-known trail, away from tourists. He said it would give us the best chance to see wildlife. The mountains loomed above us, their peaks dusted with snow, and the air smelled like pine and damp earth. I felt so small in that vast wilderness, but safe with my dad. By mid-afternoon, the trail grew harder to follow. Thick fog rolled in, wrapping around us like a ghostly curtain. The trees became silhouettes, and the world felt unnervingly quiet. Even the birds stopped singing. Dad pulled out his compass and map, muttering to himself. "We'll just adjust course, buddy," he said, ruffling my hair. But I could hear the unease in his voice. We pressed on, but the fog only grew denser. That's when we saw it. An old cabin, almost hidden among the trees. It wasn't on the map. The wood was gray and weathered, and the windows were black voids. My dad hesitated, but decided we'd check it out, hoping to find our bearings or maybe a landmark to guide us. The air inside was stale, filled with the scent of rot and damp wood. The floor creaked under our boots. On a rickety table, we found a rusted lantern and an old journal. The pages were brittle, the ink faded, but we could still make out some of the writing. It talked about strange things, lights in the woods, whispers at night, and something the writer called the Watcher. Dad dismissed it as the ramblings of a lonely trapper, but I could see he was unnerved. That's when we heard it. A soft, rhythmic tapping. It sounded like it was coming from the walls. Dad told me to stay close as he checked outside. He circled the cabin with his flashlight, but found nothing. "Probably just an animal," he said, though his tight grip on my shoulder told me he didn't believe it. We decided to keep moving. The fog had lifted slightly, and Dad wanted to put distance between us and the cabin before nightfall. But the woods felt different now. Shadows seemed to stretch and shift, even though the sun was still up. And then there were the whispers. Faint, almost like wind through the trees, but distinctly human. They surrounded us, growing louder the deeper we went. I clung to my dad's hand, my small fingers digging into his. "Dad, what is that?" I whispered. "Just the wind," he said, but his voice was strained. He pulled me along faster, his eyes darting around like he was expecting something to leap out at us. Then it happened. A bright light, blinding and unnatural, flashed through the trees. It was so intense that I squeezed my eyes shut, my head pounding from the sudden brightness. When I opened them, my dad was gone. I screamed for him, running in circles, my heart hammering in my chest. "Dad!" My voice echoed through the empty forest. The light was gone, and so was he. It was as if he'd been swallowed by the woods. I searched for what felt like hours, my cries growing hoarse. Finally, I collapsed against a tree, sobbing. That's when I saw it, a figure standing in the distance. It wasn't my dad. It was tall, too tall, and its limbs were unnaturally long. Its face, I don't even know if it had a face. It was blurry, like looking at something through rippling water. The whispers started again, louder this time, almost like they were coming from the figure itself. I don't remember much after that. I must have run, though I don't recall my legs moving. The next thing I knew, I was being found by a search party. They said I was miles from where my dad and I had started, in a part of the park we hadn't planned to visit. I tried to tell them about the light, the whispers, and the figure, but they chalked it up to trauma and an overactive imagination. What I didn't understand then, and still struggle to comprehend now, is the time. To me, it had only been a few hours since I last saw my dad, but the searchers told me I'd been missing for 5 days. 5 days, alone in the wilderness, with no food, no water, and no explanation for how I'd survived. They said it was a miracle, but I've never felt lucky. My dad was never found. They searched for weeks, but there was no trace of him. No footprints, no gear, nothing. For years, I told people we got separated in the fog, and I got lost. It was easier that way. But the truth? The truth is that something took him. Something that wasn't human. I still dream about that day. I hear the whispers, see the blinding light, and feel the overwhelming dread of that faceless figure. I've spent my life trying to understand what happened, but I've found no answers. Only more questions. All I know is that the wilderness holds secrets, and some of them are better left undiscovered. I was assured I could share this story anonymously, but I know more of you have experienced strange things in that forest. My mother was never the same and passed away not knowing the truth. I will regret that forever. Please leave a comment below to let me know I am not alone.